just started last week studying the book of Esther. And it is right before Job, if that helps you find it any better. We don't talk about Esther too much, and so sometimes we need a little bit of hints as to how to find the book. But of course, if you're using your phone, you can just go to the search engine and I guess tell it to find Esther for you. But anyway, in whatever version you want. But we are going to read it tonight, Lord willing, out of 3 different versions. The King James Version, the Living Word, and the Amplified. And so we studied last week, or we went over chapter 1, and there's a lot more to it than what we discussed, but we'll leave that for somebody's sermon, the extra details. But today we're going to check out chapter 2 of Esther and see what we can find. Chapter 1 was where Mordecai, Ahasuerus, King Ahasuerus, well, anyway, King Ahasuerus, he's a, let's see, was it Persian? I believe it was a Persian king. He was he reigned from India to Ethiopia over 127 provinces, and yes, he was the capital. Shushan, or some places it calls it Susa, was the capital of the Persian Empire, and that's where he lived and reigned as king over all these provinces. Anyway, he was having all kinds of parties and showing off all his great things, his great land, his wealth, his just everything. He was really just showing it all off. And his wife, it was Queen Vashti. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing these right. Forgive me if I don't. But anyway, I'm calling it Vashti, calling her Vashti. Anyway, he had a big feast in his area of the palace, and Queen Vashti was having one with the women at her part of the palace. And I guess he'd been drinking a little bit too much, and the more he drank of wine, the more he wanted to show off. And he wanted to show off his wife. He had a very beautiful wife, and he wanted to show her off. And so he called her to his to come. He sent a messenger from his party to her party, bidding her to come to his party long enough for him to show her off to all the guys there. Well, I guess she didn't like that idea, and she refused to come. Well, it's very dangerous to go against what a king wants you to do. So she was living dangerously for sure, because some kings would put their wife to death if they didn't go along with what they said. But at least he didn't kill her. But instead, she embarrassed him because she wouldn't come when he told her to. And so he made a decree that all wives would give honor to their husbands, and get it to all the 127 provinces, that all wives would give honor to their husbands, and that the husband would rule in every house. And he sent that all out, And he said if any man had a foreign wife, the wife was going to have to learn his language, whether he liked it or not. So I guess before they were free to speak their language from wherever they came from. But anyway, he set out that decree, and he said Vashti is no longer queen, and he declared that throughout the land. And so now we come to the chapter 2, and we're going to start reading there, because what they started to do is gather up the beautiful virgins that were in the territory to prepare them to come before the king so that he could choose a new wife to take Vashti's place. And so that's where we're at now. And so who wants to go first? Are you ready, Josie?
Yeah.
Okay, in the Living Word, let's do chapter 2, verses 1 through 4, please.
But after King Ahasuerus, or
Asherus, I think.
Asherus'
Yeah, I'm not
anger had cooled, he began brooding over the loss of Vashti, realizing that he would never see her again. So his aides suggested, "Let us go and find the most beautiful girls in the empire and bring them to the king for his pleasure. We will appoint agents in each province to select young lovelies for the royal harem. Hegai, the eunuch in charge, will see that they are given beauty treatments, and that after that the girl who pleases you most shall be the queen instead of Vashti."
Okay. Dave, are you there yet?
Oh, well, let's see. I had a little bit
Okay.
left.
Oh, you had a little bit more past verse
Of
4?
the fourth, yeah. This suggestion naturally pleased the king very much, and he put the plan into immediate effect.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That was it.
Well, that's good. So he was happy with what they were going to do,
Mm-hmm.
what their plan was, and so he's going to put it into action. All right, verses 1 through 4, Dave, in the King James.
After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti and what she had done, and what was decreed against her. Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, Let there be fair young virgins sought for the king. And let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the palace, to the house of the women, unto the custody of Hegai, the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them. And let the maiden which pleaseth the king be queen instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so.
Thank you. And in the Amplified, after these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was pacified, he earnestly remembered Vashti and what she had done and what was decreed against her. Then the king's servants who ministered to him said, Let beautiful young virgins be sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom to gather all the beautiful young virgins to the capital in Shushan, to the harem under the custody of Hegai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women, and let their things for purification be given them. And let the maiden who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. This pleased the king, and he did so. Are there any comments? have a comment. In 1 and 2, verse 1 and verse 2, for the first time, I have read this many times, but for the first time, I feel like there's an undercurrent here that's never been brought up, or I haven't heard anybody bring it up. But it tells about how after these, when, King Ahasuerus' temper had cooled off somewhat, he remembered Vashti. Now, he liked her a lot, and he thought she was beautiful, beautiful enough to where he was going to show her off at his big feast, fancy feasts that he had. And then it says, then the king's servants who ministered to him, which if you need ministered, there's got to be a reason. So could it possibly be because he missed her? Maybe. I don't know how many years they were together. I didn't research that. But I'm thinking he was a little bit sorry that he didn't have his queen anymore, but he knew it was right because she came against him and she set the standard. It's kind of like the President of the United States. His wife sets the standard. If she does certain things, all the women in the country feel like, well, if the president's wife can do it, I can do it. Well, that's the way with Vashti. If Vashti refused to obey her husband, refused to cooperate with him, got rebellious against him, whether it was right or wrong, and whether he was doing right or wrong, because it sounded like he was drunk at the time, it just... Well, it shows that he was probably a little bit down, I would think. That he was sad because she had behaved that way, and he felt forced to in order to stay respected as the king, and for all the men in the territories, the provinces, to be respected for their position in the families, households, that he felt like he was forced in this position. And then in the second verse it says, those that minister to him, the servants, it sounds like they're trying to make him feel better. They're going to gather up beautiful women from all of the provinces and let them prepare. And by prepare, what they meant was they had a beauty program that they put into effect for those who were trying out to be queen, with lotions and oils and perfumes and whatever, things to beautify them in many ways. And it was about a year process, or give or take. And so that they would prepare. It wasn't an overnight thing. And after they all got prepared in a way that made each woman the best that she could be in the ways that they provided for her, then they were going to present them to the king one by one, and then he was to choose his queen from by whichever one pleased him the most. And so and she would be the new queen to take Vashti's place. So that's what they have done. They've come up with a way to make the king, to lift his spirits, I guess you might say. And most men would think that was great, to be able to choose between all these pretty women. So anyway, the king liked the idea and he went along with it. All right, let's read verses 5 through 7, please.
Now there was a certain Jew at the palace named Mordecai, son of Jair, son of Shema, son of Kish, of Benjamin. He had been captured when Jerusalem was destroyed by King Nebuchadnezzar. How do you say?
Nebuchadnezzar, I think, but that's pretty close.
Nebuchadnezzar. And had been exiled to Babylon along with King Jeconiah of Judah and many others. This man had a beautiful and lovely young cousin, Hadassah, also called Esther, whose father and mother were dead and whom he had adopted into his family and raised as his own daughter. So how many did you say?
Okay, yeah, that's good. Just to 7.
Oh.
Yeah, it's 6 and 7, and you read those. Or 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Dave, what's your say?
Of what?
Verses
5,
5,
6,
6, and 7. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I haven't read it yet. Let's see. Now in Shushan, the palace, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimi, the son of Kish, and a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity which had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. And he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter.
Very good. And the Amplified says, there was a certain Jew in the capital of Shushan whose name was Mordecai, son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives taken with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried into exile. He had brought up Hadassah, that is Esther. One's like a Hebrew name and one's a Jewish name. his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father or mother. The maiden was beautiful and lovely, and when her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. Are there any comments? So these people, Mordecai and Hadassah, or Esther, as she was known, they were not originally from the 127 provinces. They were captives in their history, and so, but they were considered too because they were living in the land, so I guess. So anyway, and I find it interesting that Esther is a cousin of Mordecai's. Mordecai's brother and his wife, who were Esther's parents, died. And when they died, and it doesn't really say in that I could see in this that we're reading, what caused them to die. But when they died, Mordecai, who was, I got the impression, older than Esther, was her cousin, and he adopted her as a daughter, so to speak, in their way of thinking of adoption. And so he took care of her as a father would a daughter. So he must have been, quite a bit older than her. So anyway, She was a relative, and they were both Jews. And we need to remember that part, that they were Jews, and that she was considered an orphan who'd been adopted by her cousin. And so she basically, to summarize that in a short form, they were common folk as far as the king was concerned. They were common, ordinary people. They weren't anybody special with any special talents or titles or privileges. And that's what I got out of that, is that they were ordinary people considered as far as in relationship to the king. All right, now let's just read two more verses, verses 8 and 9.
So now, as a result of the king's decree, Esther was brought to the king's harem at Shushan palace, along with many other young girls. Just that
And
one.
in verse 9.
Oh. Hegai, who was responsible for the harem, was very much impressed with her and did his best to make her happy. He ordered a special menu for her, favored her for the beauty treatments, gave her 7 girls from the palace as her maids, and gave her the most luxurious apartment in the harem.
Okay. Dave, in King James, how does that word that?
8 to 9.
Yes.
So it came to pass, when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the palace, to the custody of Hegai, that Esther was brought also unto the king's house, to the custody of Hegai, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him. And he speedily gave her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens, which were meet to be given her out of the king's house, and he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women.
Okay, thank you. And Amplified says it this way. So when the king's command and his decree were proclaimed, and when many maidens were gathered in Shushan, the capital, under the custody of Hegai, Esther also was taken to the king's house and to the custody of Hegai, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased Hegai and obtained his favor, and he speedily gave her the things for her purification, and her portion of food, and the 7 chosen maids to be given her from the king's palace. And he removed her and her maids to the best apartment in the harem. Any comments? Well, it implies, but it doesn't really say this, but since she's a Jew, I assume that God is the one that gave her favor with Hegai. And anyway, he was drawn to her and felt like she was special compared to the others, even more so, even though they were all beautiful. And so he did special stuff for her. He gave her not only what the rest of them got, but he also gave her some other stuff and gave her and her maids the best apartment or area to live in of the whole harem. So he favored her. So she was off to a good start, even though she was an ordinary person, because some of those women in there were like considered of more importance because of the family they came from. But she wasn't. They considered the Jew as low on the totem pole, so to speak. All right, let's read verses 10 through 13, see what we can get out of those verses.
Esther hadn't told anyone that she was a Jew, for Mordecai had said not to. He came daily to the court of the harem to ask about Esther, and to find out what was happening to her. The instructions concerning these girls were that before being taken to the king's bed, each would be given 6 months of beauty treatments with oil and myrrh, followed by 6 months with special perfumes and ointments. Then as each girl's turn came for spending the night with King Ahasuerus, I can't say, she was given her choice of clothing or jewelry she wished to enhance her beauty. Should I go on? She was taken to the king's apartment in the evening and the next morning returned to the second harem.
Okay, now that's verse 14. We're just going to 13.
Just blends in.
Oh, it does? Okay, well,
Yeah.
go ahead and read it then.
Returned to the second harem where the king's wives lived. There she was under the care of Hegai, another of the king's eunuchs, and lived there the rest of her life, never seeing the king again unless he had especially enjoyed her and called for her by her name. By name.
Okay. And in the Amplified, that's verse 14 that you just read, but that's okay. Each version is a little bit different in their wording and how they separated the verses, so that's all right. But I do want us to remember verse 14 in my Bible, what we thought was kind of a combination of 13 and 14 in hers. How once they were brought before the king and left, they were not allowed to go be brought before the king again unless he called them specifically by name and called them into his chambers. So that's important to know that. So, all right, Dave, will you read verses 10 through 13, please?
Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did and what should come of her. Now when every maid's turn was come to go into the king Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months, according to the manner of the women, for so were the days of their purification accomplished, to wit 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things for the purifying of the women. Then thus came every maiden unto the king. Whosoever she desired was given her to go with her out of the house of the women unto the king's house.
Thank you. And in the Amplified, it says, Esther had not made known her nationality or her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her not to do so. And Mordecai, who was an attendant in the king's court, walked every day before the court of the harem to learn how Esther was and what would become of her. Now, when the turn of each maiden came to go in to King Ahasuerus, after the regulations for women had been carried out for 12 months, since this was the regular period for their beauty treatments, 6 months with oil of myrrh and 6 months with sweet spices and perfumes and things for purifying of the women. Then in this way the maiden came to the king. Whatever she desired was given her to take with her from the harem into the king's palace. Do we have any comments? All right, I want to comment on verse 10. I think that Mordecai charged her not to reveal her kindred or her nationality as being a Jew, because I think God impressed him to do that. So that removed the possibility of prejudice to determine which one was the king's favorite, because the Jews were looked down on because they were captives from elsewhere originally, so they weren't born and raised there on those in those provinces. So I just that's my theory. I don't have a Bible scripture to back that up, so just know that's my opinion. But I think that's interesting, very interesting, and you'll probably do more with it than what I just said. All right, any other comments? They have that beauty treatment, and it wasn't an overnight thing. It was 12 months all total. That's a long time, a whole year of preparation to go before the king. All right. And Josie, since you already read 14, would you read 15 and 16 in yours? And I'm not sure how they got it broken up in yours, but let's just do those two in yours.
When it was Esther's turn to go to the king, she accepted the advice of Hegai, the eunuch in charge of the harem, dressing according to his instructions, and all the other girls exclaimed with delight when they saw her. So Esther was taken to the palace of the king in January of the 7th year of his reign.
Okay. And Dave, will you read in yours verses 14 through 16? And thank you, Josie.
In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women, to the custody of Shazgaz,
Close enough.
the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she were called by name. Now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go in to the king, she required nothing but what Hegai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed, and Esther obtained favour in the sight of all them that looked upon her. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign.
Okay, thank you. And the Amplified puts it this way: in the evening she went, and next day she returned into the second harem in the custody of Shazgaz, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the concubines. She came to the king no more, unless the king delighted in her, and she was called for by name. That's what I want you to remember. Now, when the turn for Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her as his own daughter, had come to go in to the king, she required nothing but what Hegai, the king's attendant, the keeper of the women, suggested, and Esther won favor in the sight of all who saw her. So Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into his royal palace in the 10th month, the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. Any comments? No? Well, I have some. So basically, if you weren't the one picked for the queen, you were a concubine, is what I was wanting to bring out. And once you came before the king, you were not allowed of your own will to just go see him whenever you wanted to. You had to wait till he called your name. If he didn't call your name, you didn't go see him. And in verse 15, they would allow, before you went in to see the king, you to take something from the you were able to take stuff from the palace with you to go in to see the king. And she did not take what she wanted. She took what the man who was a eunuch that was over the concubines suggested she take. So she was submissive to somebody who knew more than she did. And after the way Queen Vashti had behaved in rebellion to her king, I'm sure that attitude of wanting to please somebody other than herself was one of the things that caused her to have favor. She was submissive to whoever was in authority over her. And that meant a big deal. So I think that's why she won favor in the sight of everybody who saw her. So she was beautiful not just on the outside, she was beautiful on the inside. Like in Proverbs 31, the one that we call the virtuous woman. She had inward beauty, not just outward beauty of those treatments that she took. And so, all right. Now let's read verse 17 through 20, okay?
Well, the king loved Esther more than any of the other girls. He was so delighted with her that he set the royal crown on her head and declared her queen instead of Vashti. To celebrate the occasion, he threw another big party for all his officials and servants, giving generous gifts to everyone and making grants to the provinces in the form of remission of taxes. 19 too?
19 and 20.
Okay. Later, the king demanded a second privy of beautiful girls by the time Mordecai had become a government official. Esther still hadn't told anyone she was a Jew, for she was still following Mordecai's orders, just as she had in his home.
Okay. Thank you. And Dave, will you read 17 through 20 as well, please?
And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast unto all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast, and he made a release to the provinces and gave gifts according to the state of the king. And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat in the king's gate. Esther had not yet showed her kindred nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her, for Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, like as when she was brought up with him.
Thank you. And the Amplified puts it this way. And the king loved Esther more than all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the maidens, so that he set the royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king gave a great feast for all his princes and his servants, Esther's feast, and he gave a holiday or lessening of taxes to the provinces and gave gifts in keeping with the generosity of the king. And when the maidens were gathered together the second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Now Esther had not yet revealed her nationality or her people, for she obeyed Mordecai's command to her to fear God and execute his commands, just as when she was being brought up by him. Any comments? So my comment is, because she was beautiful inside and out, she won favor with the king, and he decided to make her queen instead of Vashti. And he decided to throw a feast. And just like he did with Vashti, he had a women's feast as well as a man's feast at that time. And he called a holiday for a lessening of the taxes to the provinces and gave gifts in keeping with his generosity. And then when they were all gathered together, including the maidens, for the second time, Mordecai was sitting in the king's gate. So now Esther had not yet revealed her nationality. So she still remained in obedience to what Mordecai told her before all this gathering of the maidens happened, that she was not to reveal that she was a Jew. Not at this point, anyway. And I find that very interesting. All right. Any other comments? Okay, we're going to finish up the chapter, and then we'll have some more comments, and then prayer requests and praises. Okay. The last three verses is verse 21 through 23. Let's read those, will you please, Josie?
One day, as Mordecai was on duty at the palace, two of the king's eunuchs, Bigthan and Teres, who were guards at the palace gate, became angry at the king and plotted to assassinate him. Mordecai heard about it and passed it on the information to Queen Esther, who told the king, crediting Mordecai with the information. An investigation was made, the two men found guilty and impaled alive. This was all duly recorded in the book of the history of King Ahasuerus' reign.
Okay, thank you. And Dave, verse 21 through 23, please.
In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, were wroth, and sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the king was known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen. And Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. And when inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore they were both hanged on a tree, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king.
Okay, thank you. And the Amplified says, and the king loved Esther. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Starting in verse 21. I already read that one. I don't know why I started to read it again. In those days, while Mordecai sat at the king's gate, two of the king's eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh, of those who guarded the door, were angry and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. And this was known to Mordecai, who told it to Queen Esther, and Esther told the king in Mordecai's name. When it was investigated and found to be truth, both men were hanged on the gallows, and it was recorded in the book of the Chronicles in the king's presence. Do we have any comments?
I'm not sure. I don't know a whole lot about behind the story of Esther and everything, but it seems like a parallel going on with Jesus and the Jews of the time of Jesus. Certain Jews rejected Jesus, and then the gospel had to go out to other nations. And it's almost like a parallel thing going on here, where the king is getting rid of Queen Vashti and getting someone else from another, outside the country. And so I don't know what else to say about that, but I'm sure there's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, it appears that God had a plan, and this was part of his plan. Anyway, that's a good comment. Yeah. Um, I think it. I think in these verses 21 through 23, it shows Mordecai and Esther as being loyal to the king. They, when they heard of the plan to assassinate the king, Mordecai heard it and then told about it to Esther. They wanted to make sure that the king knew about it so he could do what he felt was right in regards to it, because you don't come, I mean, you can be angry with the king, but not so angry that you want to kill him. And by the sounds of it, their anger was to where they wanted to assassinate him and get rid of him. And so that pretty much sealed their death when they found out that that was true of them. So I do want to bring out that when in God's plan and purpose for us, there is a period of time for preparation. Just like these maidens had to prepare and do the beauty treatment and whatever else for purification that they required. We may have to have a period of spiritual preparation for whatever God has in store for us. We may need to go through some challenging times and win victory over them in preparation, kind of like with King David when he was a young shepherd boy. He had victory in protecting his sheep, and that prepared him for the victory he ended up having from Goliath, because he relied on God and he was in his own mind defending God, standing up for God, So we have periods of things that happen in our lifetime that are preparing us for future things that may happen, that God has in his plan and purpose for us, just like Queen Esther had to prepare. And then I know this is a little footnote in the Amplified. It says, do you have a hard time asking for advice? Take a lesson from Esther, who recognized the source of wisdom that the Lord had given her in Hegai, which was Esther chapter 2, verse 15. In seeking and heeding his counsel, she found favor that led to great deliverance and victory for her people. Ask the Lord to show you the people who are sources of wisdom and godly counsel in your life. So that was a lesson that was brought in as a footnote on the Amplified that I have. All right. And so it's okay for you to ask God to do for you like he did Esther and give you favor in whatever situations you're going to. It's okay to ask for that.
I just want to say that the Queen Vashti, I didn't say it right the first time, Queen Vashti was rebellious against the king. The king didn't reject her. It's that he couldn't do anything with her because the Queen Vashti was rebellious.
Yes,
And
I agree.
is showing us that when people reject God in his ways, reject Jesus, who wants to give you life and liberty and to bless you, well, when you rebel against the things of God, you do not benefit from the kingdom.
Right.
You know, it's almost like you're disqualified. You don't get the same benefits of if you were a part of the family of God. So since you're rebellious, you get the silent treatment. Just like a parent. You don't want to do things that your parents would like you to do, then you get treated differently than the other kids who want to please the parents. And so, that this is what's going on today since Jesus came. Those will be blessed who receive Jesus as their Savior and who is risen from the dead. And those who reject everything like that, well, they're not going to be prosperous. And today, there's a turning point. We used to say that the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer, but I believe there's this turning point where God's people, the world will begin to see the benefits of serving God.
Amen.
And those who have rejected God, they're putting all their faith and trust in the system of man is failing, and it's coming to an end. And just because something, a nuke goes off doesn't mean that everybody is going to run to church and accept Christ. I'm not predicting any all bad stuff and doom and gloom and road warrior stuff. But I'm just saying, there's a turning point, and God doesn't want to let his creation go to hell in a handbasket. He's in control, and he knows what it's going to take to get what he wants. And then those who are going to trust in God, they're going to run into the tower, and they're going to be protected and blessed. And that's the way it goes.
Being submissive to God is humbling ourselves before him. It's recognizing that he knows more than we do. And a humble person does not have the attitude of knowing it all. A humble person is ready to hear what somebody else has to say. And somebody that's in authority of them, they will submit themselves. She submitted to Mordecai and to God. And it's God looks upon our heart. He's more concerned with our attitude. And when our attitude is right and our actions line up with our attitude that are right, it causes us to have favor with those in authority over us and with others. And that favor is a very blessed thing to have, as we saw in this. It can mean the difference between bad things and good things happening sometimes. It just kind of depends on the results turn out good, even though there might be some rough spots there in the middle. But I like the way you put that, Dave. That was good. Yeah. All right. Any other comments? Do we have any praise reports?